being scared shitless every day is a huge motivator. Like what's going to happen in the business? Are we going to make our numbers? Are these employees okay? Is anyone going to leave? I think in this climate, you got to really be ready for anything. And so if people tell you that are running companies today, they're not, at least partially scared shitless every single day, they're lying. They're absolutely lying.
Welcome to Stickology. Today's guest is Annie Jackson, the co-founder and CEO of Credo Beauty. Annie is one of the most important people leading the clean beauty movement today. Before she started Credo, Annie worked for some of the biggest names in the business like Sephora and Estée Lauder. And while she was there, she saw exactly how the industry worked and where it was failing customers. She noticed that people were being asked to trust brands that weren't always being honest about what was in their products. Annie started Credo with a bold idea. You shouldn't have to choose between a product that works and a product that's safe. She wanted to prove that honesty is a better business strategy than just using a catchy slogan. And today, Credo is much more than just a store. It's a place where customers feel safe and proud to shop. And he has shown that when you lead with your values, you build deep loyalty with both your team and your customers. We're going to talk about how you build trust from day one, how to keep the soul as your company grows, and why saying no is often the best way to move forward. Annie, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that nice intro.
All right. Well, hopefully I got everything right. And correct me if I
That'd be
don't.
great.
I wanted to start by asking you spent years at some of these giant brands that I mentioned. What made you realize that the industry needed Credo and that you were the one to build it?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm so grateful for those experiences. They were, incredible learning experiences. I think they certainly gave me a great foundation, but also taught me kind of what I didn't want. I don't know that I ever really the term founder and entrepreneur is batted around all the time now. I don't think back then it really was. I didn't know that that's what I was seeing in myself when I kind of felt this frustration with companies that became kind of old and felt like static and kind of couldn't get out of their own way. So I think that, in many ways, little parts of all of those experiences brought together what became Credo. But I'd say probably the most meaningful was the experience that Shashi, my co-founder, and I went through, being able to be part of the founding team of Sephora in the United States, was so nuts. It was so fun. It was, we were just kids and we had so much responsibility and it was just wild. It was nuts. I mean, we were pre-internet, which really dates me. We were out there like literally pounding the pavement, looking for brands, opening stores, traveling the world. It was nuts. I think I was 26 when all that was going on and was just so grateful to be part of that ride. And really, back then, we had actually started a skincare library, we called it back then, with primarily natural brands or brands that had kind of dipped their toe in the water of using organic ingredients and pulled it right back out again. And I remember saying this, and it makes me nauseous when I think about it. But I said in a meeting with a brand once, they said, how hard they had worked to become organic. And I remember saying, the customer doesn't care. It haunts me to this day. So, that was back in 1998, and so much has
You live and
changed.
learn, I guess, right, though? You clearly did.
Yes, you really do. And I think it was such a fun experience, but really, so many lessons learned. I mean, retail is a very capital intensive endeavor. So it's not like you can really like mess around a lot with a lot of, different tests and ideas because it's really, really expensive. So, we definitely learned, through that experience of, a lot of great real estate deals, a lot of bad real estate deals, about how bad real estate deals can really almost bury a company. So we really took a little bit of everything and used that as a catalyst for Credo. I think the idea that, you know, clean beauty, and I think when we even started Credo, we weren't calling it clean. We were basically going after brands that were primarily natural. That's how we really started the company. And the thesis was like, can you find brands that are primarily natural, but they're efficacious and they don't start smelling weird and they, can work in like typical formats that people are used to using and they can be sold on the high streets and basically go toe to toe with conventional beauty. That was the thesis.
Well, Yeah, at the end of the day, it's come a long way, right? From
Yeah.
the customer doesn't care to realizing that you need something that's organic, to realizing something that you
My
need is
gosh.
natural, to so on and so forth.
Yeah.
In that journey, and certainly as a pioneer, you pay a pioneer tax, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of the more exhausting parts of holding the industry to a standard that didn't even exist, when you started Credo?
Well, I think one thing that I'm still not used to is you're kind of poking at a big bear, right? And we often get a blowback from that. Like anytime you're trying to like get in the way of a big machine, you're going to have people that aren't super psyched about what you're up to. So that can be a little daunting at times. And then I think just like you're trying to move something that's like, the old adage of like shifting a freighter around, you're trying to get people to kind of just think differently. And that can often be led with, kind of received like hitting a brick wall, and I think we saw it when people ask me questions kind of like this. Two things always come to mind. When we first started Credo, we had our restricted substance list. We call it our dirty list. Now we really refer to it as our ingredient list or part of our standard because we're not trying to out there vilifying. And so what we're trying to do is get people to think about what's in products and like, do they need to be there? Is there a better alternative? So we started with the dirty list, we'll just say, for lack of a better word right now. And it was met with like total opposition from the contract manufacturing community. It was like, who are these guys? What are they up to? Ignore them and it will go away. And then fast forward, I think it was like 6 years later that we came up with our sustainable packaging guidelines. And the packaging community was like, okay, sign us up. Like, what is the guidelines? What do we need to do? They like met it like arms open for the most part and tried to collaborate with us, wanted to talk to us a lot about what we were asking of brands. So it was a total 180. What it taught me was like, people were starting to accept the fact that at the end of the day, this was about consumer demand and consumer concern. And if they didn't jump on board and get with the program, they were going to miss out.
So, but Annie, obviously there's a level of education that had to happen to industry and to consumers. And these consumers certainly trusted those brands before you came onto the
Yeah.
scene. And so I'm
Yeah.
curious, had you earned that consumer trust as you were scaling, building awareness of your brand, building category validation? Can you talk about that? Because there's got to be a change in perception and trust over time, I imagine.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's over time. I mean, it has to just be, you can't be impatient. You're not going to change people's minds overnight. I think a lot of the work in the early years was just kind of making clear for people what we were all about. Because I spent a year in our first store getting to, it was great. It was like a laboratory, like I could hear consumer feedback. I could walk around and kind of pretend to be a customer and listen to what they're saying, watch them open jars and I think that you learn a lot by doing that. But people would walk in and say to someone, that they were shopping with, "Oh, this is the vegan store. Like, come in here and check it out. Everything's organic." And I would just kind of like, it's not really what we're doing here. And so it was a great learning experience though, because it taught us like, how do we need to meet the customer where they are? Like, what do we need to do to continue to like kind of just be on the same page with them and as we're learning kind of bring them along on the ride, and that's been our philosophy this whole time. I mean, you and I were chatting right before this podcast started about like how much has changed over the last almost 12 years that we started this business, and it's nuts how much has changed. But it's like we didn't know all that we know now, and so that's really just been as we learn things and as things evolve and innovation has changed, let's just bring our customer along for the ride with us.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious, you obviously need to bring not only your customers along, we need to bring your employees along. And, you're kind of going
Yeah.
back to that the dirty list internally. How do you balance being principled with that in mind without becoming rigid against an industry that's evolving, right?
Yeah, it's a good question because it's really easy to do that, to get like so focused on like, nope, this is our standard and everything else be damned because you're still running a business. And so you have to, and things are changing, right? Like you can't just stay in one place and expect everything to form around you. So I think that being open-minded and not being afraid to, and we're afraid all the time. Like we're afraid to be like, how do we share this with the customer? This has changed. Like, how do we change it so they don't, you know, misinterpret our point of view? And those things are hard. There's a lot of complexity around developing products just in general. And so I think that that has been kind of the key, is just been like, not being so rigid that you can't be honest with yourself about what's changing and the fact that you have to adapt with it. I mean, the whole reason we started this business was to change the industry. So to expect to stay in one place, you just can't.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I want to go back to the consumer and something you were saying earlier. You were talking about listening to what consumers had to say in stores, which is always so important. There's a big difference between a repeat customer and a loyal advocate. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if there are any specific moments when you heard feedback, whether it's in store or elsewhere, that made you realize that Credo had become a movement that people really wanted to be part of?
Yeah. I hear it in a lot of different ways. I think just kind of over time. I think one thing I took for granted that now we've completely prioritized, and I just like did it innately, was made the education of our store teams. It was just like I went into it like thinking, okay, it's important these brands are all new. Most of them are on the starting line. It's kind of fun because most of the founders aren't from beauty. So we have to really be helpful resources to our brand partners. So, we got to really, our goal is to educate our team as if they are that brand.
Hmm.
Know that product. Like my worst nightmare is walking into a store and seeing a Credo team member reading the side of a box with the client or our guest. It, that just makes me get, kind of shivers, because I want them to become that brand and be able to speak on behalf of that brand, because we have so few brands, and really be a resource for our guest in the store. And so, what began with, okay, we got to make sure we really educate people. What I heard feedback from was, I love going to Credo because, I can ask them questions and I trust the answer. Or I can get a really, in-depth one-on-one skin consultation. Or I can, kind of go in with thinking one thing and come out, understanding it better. And I thought, wow, this is really meaningful to people, and where I just kind of maybe took it for granted in the beginning. And so now we have someone running education, Ryan Clifford. He's been in beauty a long time, and we put a big investment on education. I mean, it is the cornerstone of what we do.
Well, there's a lot to be said for that. And, if you look at Credo versus other retailers out there, the giants like the Sephoras or the Ultas, or, the reality is that it's easy as a retail associate to get lost in the big picture
Yeah.
in those stores, right? And
Yeah.
while there's a lot of beauty, no pun intended, to offering so much breadth and depth to the consumers, it's really hard to understand the full portfolio. So I love what you guys have done.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
and I
you.
think that it's a controlled environment where
Yeah.
people can really understand the products inside and out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I wish I could come up with a better word than curation, because for some reason I hate it, but I don't have one. So I do think that, in many ways, you as a shopper yourself probably think to yourself, oh, I could go to IKEA, or I could go to this beautiful home furnishing store on the street near where I live, because I know it's like this kind of place of discovery. They've chosen what they think, is the best. And I can choose from those two experiences, right? And sometimes you do go to IKEA because you just need a coffee table for 99 bucks. So I think that's really what, we just keep our line of sight on, is what can we do really well? Like, what are the brands that completely align with our values, and just be unwavering in that quest as merchants. And we keep the assortment super tight. Like, we have been at 130 SKUs for 9 years now, or 130 brands for 9 years now. And our merchant team is very much like one in, one out. We're not going to balloon and make it bigger. So we really are trying to just have a very selected assortment for our guests, so we can offer them a really exceptional experience and have people that know what they're talking about when they sell the products.
Well, that makes sense, and it makes a difference in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
To that end, the clean beauty industry certainly has exploded, but not all of it's authentic. I'm curious, how
Yeah.
does Credo protect the credibility in this space that's become so crowded?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's been tough. Greenwashing sucks. We don't like it. It's really unfortunate. But I think if you think of any consumer industry, kind of the practice of overstating what you're doing and, kind of putting a green leaf on something, but doing nothing else authentically, green about the package is just something people are unfortunately willing to do. I think for us, that's, the standard's really important to us because it keeps us, having guardrails on the products that we are looking for at Credo. It helps us, talk to brands and be partners with them in terms of driving innovation. We just stay focused on that. And the other thing is to kind of always be thinking, ahead. And like, how can we continue to innovate? Our whole goal is to create a positive impact in this industry. So you got to keep moving, you got to keep innovating. And, that's really what we're doing. And I think a lot of the confusion is customers don't really understand like what is clean, like what's the definition, and there is no uniform definition across industries. And I know that's frustrating, and for us what we can do is define it, like at least what it is for Credo. And I think also like I think it's easy to get kind of swept up in all of that. So I think we just try to remain as a team really focused on what we're doing and, stay focused on the standard that we've created and, just kind of trying to keep looking ahead as far as like what's going to happen next so we can get behind it and try to kind of stay 10 steps ahead if possible.
Like any good CEO, you're looking at both your customers and you're looking at your internal people. And you kind of alluded to that a little bit before with talking about Ryan and training. I'd love to dig into your people a little more. I'm curious what behaviors you actively reward inside Credo that you believe maybe other companies are undervaluing.
Yeah, gosh. I mean, we could talk about this all day because I've worked with some incredible people in my career. I don't think I've ever had a group of people that I'm so incredibly proud of as I am today. I think, it's funny, and this is going to sound a little bananas to you, but like now I've learned it, but I've learned it kind of the hard way is if you interview someone, let's say you interview two people, and one of them is incredible experience, come from so many great beauty brands or retailers, really knows their stuff, lots of great recommendations, just no brainer on paper. Then you've got someone else that's like, hey, I might not have direct experience, but really passionate about what you guys do. I always shop in your Williamsburg store. I love this brand and that brand, and I love what you guys are doing. I'm always going to choose that person. But it took me a long time to learn that. For a while, I chose the other person, and oftentimes it didn't work out. And it's like you cannot replace passion. You just can't. And it's like what you'll get in passion back from a person like that in terms of their contribution to the business is bananas. Because you have people that are like, I'm just so psyched about what you're doing that I'll do anything. And it's not like we need people to like, I'm really proud of our culture. I'm proud of our work-life balance. But it's like when you are running a company where you have a pretty lean and mean team, you want people to think entrepreneurially. You want them to be like, bring it. Like whatever you got, I'll take it and like I'll just like run with it. And
You want them to have
if
a
you're
sense of
like,
ownership, right? I mean, you want them to feel
yeah,
like it's
they're
their
part of
company.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and that's what we have. I mean, we have a team that is like everybody's, we really reinforce kindness, pretty strict, no asshole rule. I mean, if you're going to come in and create drama and backbiting and not being respectful to your colleague, you got to go. I'm sorry. It's just not going to work. And I watch team meetings. We're remote, so we're always on Zoom with one another. People are friends with each other. Like they care about each other. They're like, caring for their colleague, and that means everything to me. I mean, it's just we spend a lot of time together. And so I think that makes me happy is because like if you have happy people that are like, oh, I'm excited to go to work tomorrow because I'm working on this project with these three people and we're really getting somewhere and that's exciting. That's awesome. It takes a lot of
Well, at
work,
the end of the
but it's
day,
awesome.
Yeah, at the end of the day, and I'm making it way simpler than it needs to be, but happy employees make happy customers. Happy customers buy
Yeah.
more product. It's a great cycle, and it's an inside out mentality. But it all starts with feeding and taking care of the people who work for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think we're not a huge multinational that's like, we'll pay for your college tuition and we'll do this and we'll do that. But I think, we're humans and we have humans working for us, and I care about them, and we listen to what they're stressed about and what they need. And so, I think, and we react to that. And so I think, that that's really important. I think a lot of companies take for granted people and think like, well, you're just here to work for us. You don't have things going on in your life that concern us. And people do, like, they really do.
And they're going to bring it to work, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So be there to embrace it, positive or negative, and ultimately it will do them and it will do you much better in the long run, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and we're all remote. So we're literally in their house. And what's crazy about being remote is, my husband retired from the fire service a couple years ago. He's around all the time listening to all these discussions. And often I'll get off of Zoom and he's like, I don't think you were being clear. Or, like we're talking to employees who have roommates, listening to all of this because they're trying to work. And I think it's like, it's a totally different dynamic than how the world used to be before 2020.
Yep. And there's a lot of opinions within your company, and then once you add spouses and roommates, there's even a lot more.
Yeah.
So
And dogs.
gigs dog.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
dogs have
so
lots of
true.
opinions.
Yes.
Can you so I love that I love what you talked about, thinking about the passionate versus the qualified, right? Obviously, ideally you get both, right? But
Yeah.
the passion makes a big difference. Once you get that person in there, can you think of a moment where employees' decisions or their actions impacted customers' trust or loyalty on the brand that you've heard about over time?
Well, I think not one example, but I think for whatever reason, the people that come in with a lot of passion are much more willing to be honest with me. So that's so helpful. Like, don't be afraid to tell me what you think and make contributions that are really genuine. And that will obviously trickle down to the customer. So I think if you're, I'm 54. And so my thoughts are going to be different than a 27-year-old at Credo. And if you're afraid to tell me what your thoughts are, like that's going to hold us back.
Hmm.
So I think, people with a lot of passion, it's hard for them to shut up. And I love that. And it's hard for them to not share their opinion. And we have quite a few of our team members that are like, hey, I wouldn't do that, or I wouldn't send that email that says that. And I listen to that. And so, and that ultimately is meeting your customer where they are, because they're all customers. I think the retail job, people working in retail, is the hardest job in the whole world. I don't care who you are or what you do. You are, and especially now, you are interfacing with people. You have no idea how they're coming in off the street, what they've experienced, what's going on in their life. They might kind of, come in not being as wonderful as you'd like them to be, but I think, our team does an incredible job remembering that and giving them extra care. Let's not like push those people out the door and say, like, get out of here, you're being a jerk. Let's give them extra care and kindness and just remember that that's what's going on. And so I think it's like you probably heard it and everyone's heard, it's like a tops down philosophy. It's like, just be a kind person. It's not that hard, be a human being. We're all together in this, and be nice.
Yeah. Well, and it begins with you at the CEO's suite, right? Leading by example, and
Yeah.
the more that you can show people that instead of just saying it, and it sounds like you do that, it makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't roll in and, I worked for a lot of companies where, the CEO is super scary and they roll in and their whole approach is to like make people feel scared, catch them off guard, gotcha moments, and one company that shall remain nameless that wasn't in beauty. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you can figure it out. Uh, God, it had a rough culture. What I always take from that experience is not really fixating on, the kind of behavioral stuff that was bananas, is the repressed talent. And it was such a disservice to that company because the people I worked around were some of the smartest, most creative, most experienced, awesome people, totally repressed because they were terrified to say anything, share their actual opinion, suggest a product that might be a little bit different than what was already carried. That's like, wow, what a waste of money.
That's how you
Huge waste
foster
of money.
quiet quitting, right? That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What a waste of
Uh,
money.
uh, and we talk a lot about values that your company has and that kind of where everything started. I'm curious, can you talk maybe about the conflict between decisions that have had to be made in certain meetings where your values maybe were in conflict with the bottom line and sales that you could achieve or numbers that you could achieve otherwise?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to your original question of not being so rigid that, kind of growing the business gets challenging. The same sort of idea is I think we're incredibly lucky. Our majority investors and owners, they themselves are very steeped in positive impact and investing in positive impact in many different areas. Honestly, it's just gonna blow your mind when I say this. I never have to fight for stuff that's impact related that's not directly revenue driving ever, which is kind of bananas. So I'll give you one example. When we eliminated single-use packaging, that extended to like stuff we used in the store, but also products that we carried, like sheet masks and things like that that were like one and done. But when we tallied it all up, all of that revenue was about 600 grand in sales, and I didn't have to fight for that. It wasn't the most exciting initiative I've come to a board meeting about. They weren't like, "Yeah," but, I didn't get pushback, but I think like I said to your earlier question about, the rigidity of standards kind of in conflict with business, when we started our sustainable packaging guidelines, of course, we always give our brand partners a long runway and partner with them. So we say like, "This is coming. We'd like to start initiating this 18 months down the road. Can we talk about what it looks like to go from virgin plastic into 50% or greater or a better material, PCR, um, and let's talk about that." We have brands at that point that had grown into Sephora and or Ulta, big distribution where it's not so easy to be like, "Oh, sure, Annie. Yeah, let's just, reverse course and get rid of all this packaging." So, it takes collaboration. And it's like if I was going to sit there and be like, "Nope, it's my way or the highway," like that would be really dumb because first of all, super short sighted and small minded. And second of all, like you have to take into account these brands are running businesses beyond Credo, way bigger businesses in certain examples. And you have to kind of adapt so that you're still feeling like you're making progress together as partners because we believe every brand partner at Credo is authentically in this space and trying to be trailblazers in their own right. So let's figure it out. So in that example, let's say it's a huge brand that is, generating hundreds of thousands of units in packaging in a different material that doesn't meet our standard, but they're lightweighting and they're using PCR paper on all their secondary curtains now. That shouldn't be ignored just because it's not our standard. So figuring all that out as we grow and, kind of locking arms on stuff like that, I would say it's been hard because it like kind of hurts your brain at times. It's hard, but that's how we grow.
Yeah. First of all, I love that collaborative approach, and it makes sense when you think about the needs of all the product owners. And I love the fact that you don't take first and foremost the my way or the highway approach. I imagine in some cases you've had to say no,
Yeah.
and I'm curious when you've said no to growth in particular, how that has strengthened the Credo brand in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I've never been a CEO before. So I've had to learn along the way. And like I said, I have very patient backers. They're probably like, "Oh my God." Shashi, we lost him in 2017 to cancer. And that was very hard. In all transparency, our investors were his relationship. And I don't think any of us, of course, were expecting to be left with me. And I think We, they together, I think I mean, we've gone through so much together and we're buddies and good friends. But I will say we've had a lot of unexpected things happen. Some of them, like losing Shashi, which is traumatic and really, can disrupt a business for a long time, that has stifled our growth. But when I look back now, and a lot of times, our investors, and they're called Next World, will say, just cool your roll. Like I really was ready to let's go, let's open a lot of stores, like let's get in neighborhoods. And of course it's very expensive. And a lot of times they're taking a more slow, measured approach. Thank God. Honestly, thank God, because had we had a larger organization in COVID, we would not be here today. We had a manageable amount of stores. We had a manageable amount of staff. We were able to keep our retail staff employed during COVID, and we put them on live chat and we continued the business going. And thank God, because our size was our winning ticket at that time.
Yeah. Well, it's remarkable the little surprises that boards sometimes can give us in wisdom that we may not have been able to accomplish on our
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You talked a little bit about this, but maybe we can dig in a little deeper. As a founder CEO, things have changed a lot in 12 years, and I'm
Yeah.
curious if you can talk about what style has changed for you, what you've learned or unlearned as a result over that course of time.
Yeah, I mean, we've had 2 CEOs that we've hired, because to be honest, like this was never, I didn't wake up and say, I want to be a CEO someday. I really like being an entrepreneur. I like being out in stores. I like finding brands, being in a boardroom, arguing about the price of pencils. It's not really what I enjoy. So we did hire 2 CEOs. I think, those experiences taught me a lot. I think it taught, nothing against those individuals, but I think when you just can't find passion, like I have. I mean, I started this company. I know this company inside and out. It's part of my DNA. It's like my family. I mean, it's like it's ingrained in me, and I will fight tooth and nail for it. I'll never stop, working my ass off for it. So I think it was hard to find someone that was going to kind of fit that. But what it taught me was like, I can do this. I really can. And I need to trust myself. And I also didn't really understand until we went through it what a disruption it can be and how time consuming it can be to have people like that, A, come into your organization, and B, leave your organization. So it's been a huge learning. I mean, I basically went to business school in those experiences. So, I wouldn't do it any differently. I'm incredibly grateful that it happened because it allowed me to trust myself.
Well, it's funny. I think about my own path, and while I appreciated my business school days, I learned more as a small business owner over the 15 years I owned my company. You just kind of you figure it out, right? And that's it's
Yes,
your feet to the fire, right? So you figure it
you
out,
have no choice.
right? Yeah,
Like, what are
yeah,
you going to do? There's no one to
right.
talk to. Like, you just have to figure it out.
You take care of your people. You have to make sure, and
Right.
you make sure you build your business.
Yeah,
So you got,
exactly.
it's hard enough to feed your mouth and your spouse's mouth and your kid's mouth, but then you have 50, 100, 1,000 employees. The next thing you know, there's a lot of mouths to feed. So you got to do it right.
Yes.
So
Yes. I mean, it's so true. And I mean, I imagine during your experience, certainly during mine, being scared shitless every day is a huge motivator. Like what's going to happen in the business? Are we going to make our numbers? Are these employees okay? Is anyone going to leave? I think in this climate, you got to really be ready for anything. And so if people tell you that are running companies today, they're not, at least partially scared shitless every single day, they're lying. They're absolutely lying.
truth right there. What is one decision that you've made that best defines Credo's long-term stickiness with both your employees and your customers? I wonder if you can talk about that. Can you think of one?
The standard, 100%. I, you know, we've had some very talented people architect this standard. Mia Davis, Christina Ross, Vivi Pochel, Amy Galper. I could keep going. Incredibly accomplished people and experts in toxicology, sustainability, and science. But it's our North Star, and it's given a real substantive background for Credo that I don't think anyone else can adapt or adopt to. I think, certainly you can say, like, oh, hey, here's our clean beauty aisle over here. And who knows who's vetting it, what it stands for, like, what are the parameters. But for us, it's absolutely the foundation of substance that customers are looking for. And that has been our North Star and the whole reason we exist. So developing that, like really operationalizing what we do and deciding to build that and make that the guardrails for everything that goes on at Credo it was the game changer for us.
What does sustaining trust look like over the next decade, especially as you plan to grow?
I think for us, you just have to keep doing what we're doing, being very honest with customers about things that come up. And sometimes they're, not self-serving to Credo. We have our impact report that we generated in 2025. We didn't make our sustainable packaging guidelines, but we, shared where we are in the journey and, like the process that we're at and where we're headed forward. And I think companies are really afraid to do that. I understand why they're afraid, to be honest, but I think, that's what goes a long way with customers. It's like if you're doing something that you want to tell your customer and you're trying to find all kinds of marketing mumbo jumbo to say it, it's probably not going to go over as authentically as like, hey, we learned this and, we wanted to let you know and just keep going. I think also not being afraid to change our standard in the face of innovation is something that will go a long way with our customers. So I think, just again, it's just taking them along on the ride with us, and it might be things that are positive to Credo, and sometimes it might be negative, but we just can't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, well, authenticity makes the biggest difference, right? People know that they
Yeah.
can trust you.
Yeah.
You've been amazing. I have a few lightning round questions for you, and then I'll let
Okay.
you go. Number one, what is one thing Credo does for employees that you will never stop doing?
Oh, I mean, caring about them 100%, like listening to what's going on with them and reacting.
Yep, yep. I think that's beautiful. What is the biggest lie people believe about community building?
The biggest lie about community building. I think that, I think the influencer piece is hard because it's often kind of bought. We work with influencers too, but I think working hard to find people that are authentically aligned with you. So they're actually building a community that's authentic to them. I think that's the key because otherwise it's just a bunch of BS. And the customer sees that.
Well, I think more than ever people can tell, right?
Yeah.
Next question. If the term clean beauty disappeared tomorrow, what would you want Credo to be remembered for?
I think being, like I was saying, a place of substance, like a substantive beauty destination where, I think people are a little exhausted by the term clean. I'm not going to disagree. I think, we came up with that term. I remember the day. Honestly, I give all props to Goop. Like they were the ones that said it first. And so I remember sitting in a conference room. It was me, Shashi, and Kathy, who, she's done every job at Credo, but now she's our head of retail. We sat around thinking like, feel like we need to like elevate from natural beauty to, because we are getting some brands that are using synthetic ingredients. We're cool with that. Like as long as, they're good for you ingredients and have a reason to be there. So what should we call it? Safe beauty, clean beauty, healthy beauty. And we thought clean was kind of sexy and fun, and safe and healthy kind of took it down like more of like felt very like scrubbed and sanitized, not inspirational like beauty should be. And so now, of course, we weren't looking at it as like, oh, and everything else is dirty, trying to make it this very polarized space. So I think for us, like it's so far beyond restricted ingredients now for us. It's about ethics, it's about values, it's about transparency, it's about supply chain, it's about sustainability. So moving beyond clean, which I think kind of pigeonholes people and like bad ingredients, we don't even talk about that anymore. I mean, we have moved on. So I think, being a substantive retailer is really, that people can trust is really, if I leave Credo one day and that's the thought that people have of our company, I'd be so proud.
Well, for good reason. Last question. In one word, what is the secret to making people stay?
Kindness.
I thought you were going to say care. Kindness works too.
Yeah, kindness goes a long way.
Yeah. Well, we can agree on that. We can agree on pretty much everything that was said today too.
It's
But
easier than being mean too, just by the
what
way.
say again?
It's easier than being mean.
It
Be
is.
kind.
It
Yeah.
is. And who wants to work in a mean environment? Not even the people who want to be mean, right?
Man, I've done it before. It's no fun.
Yeah.
No
Um,
fun.
Annie, I'm so impressed with the brand that you've built
Thank you.
and everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you very much.
Obviously, you know this. I wrote about your company in my book, and really because it's so inspiring. So thank you for
Thank you.
the inspiration of you and your team and the impact you guys are having on everything. So love
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for writing about us. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.